Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, good night, good day, wherever you are on the planet, wherever you're dialing in from. Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Nim Grinfeld. I am the technical evangelist here at Kintone, and it's a pleasure to welcome you here today to join us for our workshop on React and Three.js and Kintone and mixing all of them together. There's a few to-dos. If you have not done them already, we want to make sure that you've got all of the materials that you need to follow along with us today. It's going to start with the code and the slide deck, and there's a link to them that you can see in the deck, bit.ly/Kintone3D. What you're going to do is you're going to follow that link. It'll take you to the GitHub repository, and you can go ahead and git clone that GitHub repository. The next step is to sign up for a Kintone developer account. You're going to need that if you want to participate fully today. And then you will also sign up for your very own Kintone environment, which we call a subdomain, and you'll do that at this link right over here, bit.ly/k_devlice. So if you hopped onto GitHub and you looked for the repository and you've downloaded it, you are going to install the following dependencies. If you haven't cloned your repository onto your local machine, please go ahead and do that right now. But then if you have, it's time to spin it up with an npm install. So you're going to npm install all of the various modules, the node modules that are going to be the ones that you need for our time today. And then you can go ahead and also install a module called Kintone Customize Uploader. So Kintone Customize Uploader will automate the process of posting your JavaScript code to your Kintone environment without you needing to manually update it every time. We're going to use this repository as a starting point. We'll sign up for a developer account. You're going to do that by clicking on this link. Don't use Safari. Make sure you accept cookies, and you can use Chrome and Firefox. You'll need your full name. You'll need your email. You'll need to prove you're not a robot. Jury is still out on whether all of you are not robots, but we'll see. Maybe we have some bots who are joining us from various countries around the world here to probe Zoom's defenses. And then create a Kintone subdomain. You'll drop your first name. You'll drop your last name. You'll drop your email, company name, and then you will set up your Kintone developer license subdomain. This is a free domain for your use for at least a year. And you want to make sure that you name your subdomain with only alphanumeric characters and hyphens. Is anyone here a coffee for life kind of person? Sean, are you a coffee for life person?
A bit.
Once you've completed your filling out the form for your Kintone subdomain, you should receive an email that'll walk you through logging into your subdomain. The link to your Kintone account will be like whatever is the string that you put in, .kintone.com. So if you need any help, folks, we've got a debug section of the repository's README. So there are some common issues that folks run into from time to time, and this will guide you through some of those issues. And then anything that's not working for you, please go ahead and post it in the chat. We need your code. We need your error messages. At the very least, your error messages will help us direct you. And at this point, I want to introduce my colleagues, Genji and Sean, all the way from Tokyo. So Genji is our developer advocate. He's the lead person putting all of the magic together behind our workshops. Sean is joining us as, Sean, you're a developer advocate. Is that correct?
Yes, great.
Sean is joining us as a developer advocate. He's a recent addition to our team, and this is his first workshop that he's put together. So the high quality of the materials, all of everything that you're seeing that's conducive to like us learning stuff, that's all Sean's contribution. So let's create a 3D gallery with React, Three.js, and Kintone database. Here's what we're going to make today. It's going to look like this. It's going to be a bunch of 3D objects spinning around in space. And so this workshop is going to have 3 parts to it. First, we're going to set up the project. So if you want some, if you want to get your hands dirty in spinning up a JavaScript project, working with NPM, configuring environmental variables, running scripts, that's the first thing that we're going to do. Then we're going to spin up our Kintone environment. We're going to create our first Kintone app. You can imagine an app as like a spreadsheet or a database, only more helpful. We're going to create something called a custom view, which is going to allow us to hook all of this interesting behavior that we've programmed into our Kintone environment. And then we're actually going to build that behavior. We'll be playing around inside of the JavaScript, building a what's called a scene. Three.js has its own vocabulary that we'll be going over. And we'll be getting the information for the shapes from our Kintone database records, then displaying the shapes, maybe even animate. I say maybe even, we're going to also animate and randomize them. Okay. So I said Three.js has its as a special vocabulary, and I'm going to share that with you right now. The basics, there's something called a scene. Scene is like the space that we are playing in, the universe that we build in. Then we've got the camera and the lights. So this is like our perspective in 3D space using the browser window as like literally a window or like a viewfinder into that 3-dimensional space. Imagine that has its own, like the view of our eyes in this space has its own orientation to it, because we could imagine that like we might see some shapes and they might like Star Wars crawl away from us, but they might even shoot toward and past us and then be behind us in the space. So you start thinking, when you start thinking about the way 3-dimensional objects move around in this scene, we don't just need the actual objects, we need to think about the space that they're in as well as where we are located in the space and how does the lighting hit the objects so that we can see them in the first place. Shapes are called meshes. A mesh has 2 parts, a geometry and a material. A geometry is like the wireframe and the material is the skin, and together they make a mesh. Okay, so remember those phrases: scenes, cameras, lights, and meshes. Meshes are made up of a geometry and a material. Geometry is the wireframe and a material is the skin. Altogether, what it looks like is we've got a bunch of meshes out there in space. We've got a camera, and our scene takes place in front of the camera, looking at what we look at. And the mesh provides the shapes and the textures. And if you know, you might ask, well, where is the lighting? This is a global light source, so it's generally radiating from everywhere. We want to make sure that you've installed the correct dependencies. So if you have not done this already, please go ahead and npm install, and then also npm install global this module called Kintone Customize Uploader. Run these commands from your terminal. And then what you should see if you open up the repository in your code editor, I'm using VS Code. So folks, inside of this repository, in this directory, you'll notice there are a few folders, there are a few files, and the ones with the blinking stars are the ones that we're going to be touching today. And they are .env, customize-manifest.json, and index.js. This .env file is going to hold the environmental variables for our login information into Kintone, so we can automate the process of uploading our so that we can automate the process of uploading our build file into Kintone without needing to manually just do it every time that we update our work. The customize-manifest.json gives instructions for that automation to where it gets directed in your Kintone environment. And index.js is where we will be playing with our actual Three.js code. It'll be where we play with the creation of meshes and scenes and lighting and cameras. Let's go over Kintone so you know what tools we will be using in this build and why. Kintone is a no-code, low-code platform for teams to easily share and collaborate on their data efficiently. Look, we've got tools for collaboration like Slack and email and, God forbid, WhatsApp. We've got databases and places to put data like, God forbid, Access or Excel. Those are not in 2022, we don't consider those appropriate selections for databases. What makes Kintone special is that the data and the conversations about the data are all in one place. Now, why is that a big deal? Okay, we've got multiple apps that talk about the data. We've got multiple places where the data lives, right? And the conversations about the data are all over the place. Those files are all over the place. It makes it really hard to focus in a collaborative environment and coordinate effectively. There is a lot of overhead that happens when there's stuff in a variety of different places. A typical knowledge worker spends like 20% of their time just looking for stuff. Information is not being shared effectively. It's not clear where the conversation is happening. What's that gosh darn email thread where 30 people were CCing each other? Like, how much of that information do I really need to know? It's a huge pain. What Kintone makes possible is to remove that friction. And so what we're looking at is a sample page on Kintone for a sample record in a database. And what you see on the left-hand side is the stuff like the fields that would be in a record. And on the right-hand side, you've got the conversation that is taking place about the contents of the record. And so what that allows for is a smooth experience of working together. And from here, you can set up workflows so that you are passing items to the right people at the right time, so that you only need to see what's important when it's relevant for you to see it. So some examples of that might be like expense reports, legal document reviews, hiring processes, things that even in a software engineering environment, you ultimately need to engage with. Although Kintone is not just limited to software engineers. In fact, sales teams, marketing teams, operations teams, in many different industries use Kintone. So for example, take expense reports. In this example workflow, you can have an expense report be submitted by the user, then be approved by the manager before being sent to the accounting department. So this is all predicated on something in Kintone called an app. You can imagine an app as like a spreadsheet or a database table, only more helpful, really. And apps are easy to create. You build them out by using a drag and drop interface. You don't need any coding. They are, however, extensively customizable with client-side JavaScript. So why does this matter to you? Well, so first of all, the folks who don't know how to code and would have previously gone to you or your colleagues and asked you to fix things or build things or just kind of be general pains when you're just kind of the kind of people that you were like, oh, I really wish that you could do this yourself without bugging me. Kintone allows them to self-serve without needing to bug you. So they can create things that they just simply couldn't have created before because the barriers to entry were too high. And for you as a developer, you can enhance the capabilities of the platform with client-side JavaScript, which is something special that only you can do. So what this does is it enables you to focus on the stuff that's worth more of your, like that makes your time more worthwhile, because the dumb interruptions are off your plate, and your opportunities to contribute, your special opportunities to contribute are present. Now, ultimately, this fulfills the promise of groupware. And when I talk about groupware, I'm talking about collaborative software that helps teams work better together wherever they are. With groupware, you can share meaningful insights about the data that become operationalized quickly. And so where do you as a developer contribute? Hey, learner, it's really early here. You can absolutely get a recording of the session. That'll come to you, and Genji will give you more details about how to access the recording as needed. So how do developers contribute? Where do you fit into all of this? So by creating a custom look and feel, like a command center, a place where you want to land on and see what's going on, like a more powerful version of Trello or Asana. Let's say you want to have all the data in one place, and you want to have like a collaboration layer that's above the data layer. That's got comments and this kind of workflow management. So for this to happen, to like be a central meeting point for all of the important third-party web applications, you need developers to build those integrations, or to build platform extensions, what we call plugins, where you take some kind of client-side JavaScript and you wrap it in a GUI, like a single form GUI that enables configuration where previously folks would have needed to code stuff. So inside of Kintone, we've got a lot of tools to help you do that work. We have well-documented, freely available JavaScript and REST APIs. We have API tokens for secure authorization, and webhooks to punt data from Kintone into other third-party applications based on triggers that take place inside of Kintone. These plugins that I was mentioning, which are like packaged extensions for end users, like imagine like a Chrome extension. JavaScript customizations, that's what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be building a JavaScript file and uploading it into Kintone. That's a customization. CSS and HTML customization, same idea, and then precise permission controls. So when I talk about creating a custom look and feel, I'm quite serious. There's a lot of options over here, and we're going to be playing with some of that today, because this is the stuff that we're going to be using to hook into to build our 3D scene. So you'll see on the left-hand side, we've got like a bubble graph, and on the right-hand side, one of our colleagues built out a Space Invaders clone in Kintone. So if you're looking to learn stuff, and if you're looking to use Kintone for your self-learning, here are some suggestions. You can share your projects with the community, you can contribute your learnings to tech blogs, and you can keep playing around with JavaScript to improve your abilities. If you are looking to generate some revenue, then here are some opportunities for you to create and sell Kintone extensions, to consult with firms on achieving business goals, and to develop Kintone customizations for customers. If any of these things interest you, I invite you to connect with me on LinkedIn, and I can and ask about this. And I'm happy to direct you further for like how to make that happen. Okay. So that's why. Now let's go into the what. And we're going to step-by-step create a Kintone app. And you're going to start by logging into Kintone if you have not already. Okay, so check your email. You'll need to activate your developer license, confirm your subdomain, and then once you log in, you'll see this page. Click on the Kintone button. you'll see you are now inside of your Kintone subdomain. This is your portal, and what we're going to do here is we're going to add an app. Now, typically your portal is like an empty canvas where you might put like charts, graphs, filtered lists, records of note, important links. Your canvas is, for the most part, empty, which makes sense because we just spun up a brand new subdomain. We're going to fill it with an app. And we do that by clicking on this button over here. We'll create our first app from scratch. So after we click on that plus sign, we'll come to a screen that says Kintone Marketplace. And there'll be many different ways to create Kintone apps. We're going to create an app from scratch. And once we do, we'll be taking to this form builder page. This is the place where I was talking about you can drag and drop to create your app. And so what we're going to do over here is just that. First, oops. So first you're going to rename this app 3D Gallery. 3D Gallery. Okay. And from here, you're going to drag and drop these fields from the palette on the left-hand side of the screen to the canvas. So the palette, you'll see there's a number field and a drop-down field. You're going to drag one drop-down field and 3 number fields. And it'll literally go like this. It'll go 1, 1, 2, 3. And then you might have them be all up in columns and stuff. You can place them wherever you'd like on your screen. We're going to have them all in one row. This part is the code list database creation. Absolutely, Sean. So this is the part that makes your life a lot easier. So for you as a developer, it means you build things hella quick. And for you as a developer, it means other people get to build stuff without needing your help. So that's pretty awesome. What we're going to do now is edit each field. And so we do that by hovering over the field, and then there's a gear wheel at the top right of each field that we hover over. Hovering over that gear wheel will drop a context menu. And what we're going to do is we're going to click on settings. When we do that, we'll then be taken to a settings window for each field. And we're going to start with the drop-down field. The first thing that we're going to change is the value of the name field. We're not going to call it drop-down. The name of it's going to be shape type, like this. Okay? And then we're going to create our options for our drop-down. And you're going to need to create the following options. There are 2 options. The first one is going to be cube with a capital C, and the second one is going to be torus with a capital T. When you open up the settings for your drop-down field, change the value of name to shape type, and then for your 2 options, put in cube with a capital C and torus with a capital T. Do not misspell this. Do not have it be all in lowercase. These values must be identical for your code to work. I repeat, these values, cube with a capital C and torus with a capital T, must be an exact match in order for the code to work. Another exact match that you will need is in this area called field code. Okay. The field code is our behind the scenes unique identifier for this field that our code references in order to make things work. Please change that field code to shape type, camel case, like we're seeing right now, which is with a lowercase s and a capital T, shape type. Once you've made those changes, we're going to go into the number field and we're going to edit the number field settings. Here's what you need to do. First, so you're going to do this 3 times. First, you're going to change the name, and it's going to be length. For the second and third times you do this, the values will be width and depth. For each one of those 3 number fields, you'll set it to be required. And you will set the parameters from the limits of the value from 0 to 100. And then at the bottom of this field settings page, change the field code to length, width, or depth respectively, and make sure these are lowercase. You're going to do this 3 times. And then your app will look like the following. You'll have 4 fields. The first one will be shape type. It'll be a drop down with 2 values, cube and torus, both capitalized. Then you'll have 3 number fields, all of which are required, with the following names: length, width, and depth, and the following field codes: length, width, and depth, all lowercase. They will all be required fields, and their parameter the value limits will be between 0 and 100. From here, we're going to create a custom view. So what we've done so far is we've created the schema for our database. Our database has 4 fields, and now we're going to be setting up the way the data gets presented, okay? So we're going to do that by clicking on the Views tab. And from here, we'll be taken to a page that's got, it'll have a list of views. And in this case, you should have 1 view, and it'll say all records. In any case, you'll click on a plus sign over here. Okay. And when you do, you'll be taken to this page where it'll say, where you can set up the name for your view and then drag and drop the relevant fields into the view that we're creating. You're going to name this view Gallery View. You can safely ignore all of these Japanese characters. And what you're going to do is you're going to click on the radio button that says Custom View. So we can put anything in HTML over here. We're going to need to do 2 things on this page at this point. And the first is to grab this numerical string. This is your view ID. And the reason why we have this view ID is because we will at some point need our code to uniquely identify this view. And so please copy this value and put it somewhere safe, because in like a very short period of time, I will ask you for it. I'll be like, remember that thing that I told you to save? And you'll be like, yes, and I know exactly where I put it. And it's going to be this number, okay? Yours will very likely not be 5524766. It'll be some other number. Just keep it. That's the important part. And the second piece is to add a div over here with the ID of root. You're going to copy and paste this string or just write it out. It's a div tag and then a close div tag, and the div has an ID of root. Now, here's what's really cool about this setup, okay? What we're doing is we're putting in just a little bit of HTML that we will then hang all of our code from. So it's critical that you put this HTML in so that our code can hook onto the right element. It will look for an element with the ID of root, and that's what it'll find. Once you've copied your view ID, and once you've added your HTML code, that little snippet, you're going to save your code. Sorry, you're going to save your view. The top left of the page, there is a blue button that says save. You're going to click on that, and then you're going to click on this blue button that might say activate app or it might say update app. Either one's fine. Activate app or update app to implement the changes. And once you do, you'll be taken to this page. It's for the most part an empty page. And it's expected that it's empty because what it is a div with an ID of root that has no behavior hooked into it, and there's no data in this app. So there's nothing to display at the moment. What we're going to do next is we're going to start adding data. Go ahead and click on the plus sign at the top right. Go ahead and click on the plus sign over here. And we're going to add some data. So surprise, the data is in the schema that we've set up. We've got a drop down and we've got 3 number fields. Go ahead and choose a shape type and then input a length, a width, and a depth. You can have any numbers between 0 and 100. And I'd like you to do this 3 times. So what you're going to do is you're going to complete filling this out and then hit save. Okay. And then you're going to fill out, let's do 3 of these. And we're going to go to the all records view. If we're not there already, you'll see your records starting to fill in. When you move from all records to gallery view, you'll see that they've disappeared because all that there is on this page is an empty, like a div with an ID of root and no other behavior. At this point in time, we're about to get into our code. I know this is the part that everybody's been waiting for. Here's what we're going to do first. Input Kintone Subdomain. Okay, so what we're going to do first is we're going to connect our Kintone Subdomain. And it's going to start over here in this file called .env.example. So for all of you who are using VS Code, which is, I believe, all of you, look for .env.example in your directory. Okay. Now, .env.example is a placeholder for an actual file that's going to hold your environmental variables. Now what you'll see is there are 4 environmental variables for you to put in. There's the Kintone base URL, there's your username, your password, and the view ID. Okay. We are not going to make any changes to this .env.example. What we're going to do instead is duplicate it. So we can copy and then paste. And we're going to create a separate file called .env. We've set up our environment so that we have this example placeholder so that when we upload our file into GitHub, if we're pushing our work into GitHub, that we will have a placeholder describing to the users on GitHub the environmental variables that we are expecting without sharing our sensitive information. Our sensitive information will actually be stored in this .env file, which is git ignored and will not be automatically pushed up to GitHub. So this .env file will remain local on our machine while we push up the .env.example. So this is what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to change your Kintone base URL so it'll be, you'll change it to whatever yours is. Ours is dev events.kintone.com. So I know to change over here. So https://devevents.kintone.com. That is the base URL. Then your username. I don't know what yours is. It's probably the email address that you used to sign up for your account. Ours is going to be developer. Right? Then your password. I definitely don't know what yours is. And you're not going to know what mine is either. I'll put it in momentarily. You're going to keep yours sensitive as well. And then your view ID. Your view ID is found. It's that thing that I told you that I was going to ask you about, that I said, make sure that you put this somewhere safe because you're going to need it. And now is that moment where if you've kept it secret and kept it safe, that you will you're gonna grab it. And if you didn't, you can follow along with me as I grab mine. Did you keep it secret? Did you keep it safe? And now we're going to change our customize-manifest file. Okay. We're going to grab something called an app ID, which is going to be the number, the unique number associated with the app that you created. This customized manifest file will tell your build workflow, your JavaScript build workflow, where to, on what app to point the automatic JavaScript upload in what app it'll be inside of your subdomain. So for me, that app is app number 38, and I'll show you how I know that. Inside of the app that you just built, the one that we built together, the URL for this app inside of the record list view will be whatever you put in as your subdomain name, .kintone.com/k/ and it's probably the number 1. This is if you started a brand new Kintone environment and you created your first app along with us, then the value of it's going to be 1. But if you were playing around before or after, this may be a different number. Okay, you need to put that number inside of the customize-manifest.json in the app property. Ours is 38, yours is probably 1, but it might not be 1. Okay, so once you've done that and you've completed filling out your .env file, now we can do npm run start. So in any case, this is what my setup will look like when I've completed the setup correctly. From here, we got the view ID, get the username. All right, now let's explore the code. And now I want to take you to the part where we're inside of index.js. And what we're going to do, go into our index.js file. Let me explain to you what we're seeing over here. We've got a bunch of import statements. We're importing React. We're importing specific functions from React called use state, use effect, and use ref. We're going to import all of our functions from Three.js, all of the ones that are publicly exportable. Going to import this index.css file and this getRecords.js file. This getRecords.js file holds our interactions with the Kintone REST API. So there's stuff happening behind the scenes that we're not going to touch today. But if you get curious or you want to dig deeper into it, please take a look at that JavaScript file inside of the requests folder. Okay. Over here, what we've got is an immediately invoked function expression. The reason why we've got it is because when we are uploading files into Kintone, the files might, like we upload individual files into Kintone, and to make sure that each file that we have doesn't expose functions into the global scope that might impact other files, each of the files is sort of forcefully scoped with an immediately invoked function expression. This is not like a typical thing that we do with React, but it is something that we do with Kintone to preserve the integrity of our function, to preserve the integrity of our namespace across the various files that we upload. We're going to use strict, and we are going to grab the custom view ID. This is the one that we put into our environmental variables. You might be wondering, where does this process.env come from? This is a function of node. Node coupled with the node module called .env allows us to append properties to this object and hold environmental variables over there. Now we see something called Kintone.events.on, and what this is, this line is like an event handler. So event handlers, we might be used to event handlers as something that we see with like browser event handlers, like on-page load, for example. But with Kintone, you can do one better than that, because certain because these special event handlers guarantee that certain functions and displayed elements will already be rendered by the time that this event is triggered. The name of this event is called app.record.index.show, and when it occurs, the following callback function happens. App.record.index.show is merely a way to say, well, not merely, it's like a special way to say when we are on the record list page, we're going to do a bunch of stuff. First, we check if the view that we are on is our custom view, in which case, if it is, or if it's not, then we notify you in the console that we're not where we want to be. If we are on our custom view, we're going to create a function called app, and this is where React begins to kick in, okay? This function app is a component, and what's happening is we're going to render this component in React. It's going to find an element called root, and in that element, it's going to then attach the following React components. This is syntactic sugar for like special things but happening behind the scenes that React is doing to turn this snippet into JavaScript. You might be wondering what React strict mode does. It's going to make it more useful for debugging. We don't need to worry about it in the production build, but we're not in a production build right now. So onward to our application app, or to our component called app. And so what we're going to want to use in the middle, what we're going to want to use over here is first a declaration for our, for our scene. It's going to take some time for Three.js to mount the scene. And so we're using a React function called useRef to tell React that our canvas is going to show up in this place. And then we instantiate a renderer, which will figure out how to display what we're seeing, okay? From here, we are going to leave these two guys as an exercise and take a look at what we've got over here with useEffect. So useEffect is a React function that will automatically re-render certain elements when some conditions are met. The conditions that we've set up over here are on-page load, basically. So when the page is loaded, we are going to render our elements. What are we rendering? Well, first, we're going to mount the renderer to the DOM. We're going to instantiate a new scene for that canvas. We're going to create a background for it. That's going to be that space background, okay? And so far we've created a canvas, we've mounted the canvas, we've told React to wait for to expect our canvas to mount, even if it takes some time. We've created a texture for the background, and we're creating a scene that's going to happen inside that canvas, and the renderer to make all of the rendering happen. And now we're going to create our background, our camera. These instructions tell our camera where to position itself in the scene and how big the viewport is going to look like. So the window that we're using to look into our scene, how big is it? We want to position our camera so that it's a little farther out and it's easier to see our shapes. And then we want to add a global light so that we can see the shapes that we're about to create. These are various different positions of lighting. And from here, what we're going to do is get our records. Now, if you remember, our records, that's the data that we have that we will use to represent the magnitude of our objects and the type of objects they are. So remember, we had a length, a width, a depth, and a shape type, and that's exactly what we're expecting over here. We're going to get our 3 to 5 records, and then for each result, we are going to update the length, width, and depth with the length, width, depth of the numbers that we put in Kintone, and also set the shape type as well. And so over here, we've got 2 different shape types. There's the cube, and then there's the torus. And so we need to create a mesh. So remember, a mesh is a geometry and a material. The geometry is the wireframe, and the material is the skin. So let's go ahead and get started by building out the wireframe of the cube. Okay, so we've got this cube and this, and so we're expecting, if we're going to build a wireframe for a cube, we need a length, a width, and a depth. We can put that in right over here. The width, the length, and the depth. Okay, so now we are inserting our values to create a geometry. Okay, and then we're going to want to create our material. So what's our color going to be? Well, we've spun up a value for random color, and all we need to do is pass random color in over here into our material. Okay, so that's it. We've put in our length, our width, and our depth. We've passed in a random color. We've used the shape type to identify which case we're going to be in. And what I invite you to do is to make this more sophisticated. Instead of using cube material, to use something called Fong material, which is a shiny skin. So if you'd like to try that out as an exercise, I invite you to do that. Okay, so now we're going to create a mesh. A mesh is going to be a combination of cube geometry and cube material. And we'll position it semi-randomly. And that's it. And then we're going to add it to the scene. For torus, it's quite similar. But torus is, we're going to spin up a random color. And we're going to need not a high, we kind of cheated here. We called it length, width, and depth, right? But it's actually, because it's a torus, we need the radius of the torus. Think of a donut, right? Like how thick is the donut? How wide is the donut? And something called radial segments, which is like how circular is the donut versus like pieces of an arc that are like more choppy. And so we're going to use the values of length, width, and depth. Although they are not actually length, width, and depth over here, we're kind of cheating. The numbers will be fine in either case. And technically, donuts don't have length, as Sean is stating. And the color is very similar as well. We need random. We'll drop a random color over here, and then we combine them with a torus geometry. Use torus geometry and a torus material. What's next? We're going to position the torus. We add it to the scene. And then we can set up an animation. So we can rotate our meshes and render them in the scene viewed from our camera. This function over here handles, like if you change the size of the browser window, that the canvas updates as well. We're going to animate these meshes when when use effect is triggered by React. And then a little bit over here, just to make sure that when we change pages, that we free up memory space. This is a React piece. And so what we're going to return is this little snippet. And if you're eagle-eyed, you'll know that this is React. Sorry, when I say this, what I'm referring to is this snippet. This snippet is a React snippet. This snippet is not JavaScript. It's a bunch of HTML-looking things masquerading it's a bunch of JavaScript masquerading as HTML. And React, what it does is it takes this syntactic sugar, this ability to make pretend HTML and turn it into JavaScript on the back end, and that's what makes this snippet actual JavaScript. It's because of React's magic happening behind the scenes. We then come back to rendering, which is what we saw originally. And from here, we should be able to save our work and see the change. Yep, we can try restarting this. So Control-C will interrupt this process. And let's go ahead and run this again. And let's see, we've got the deployment happening. So here's what I'm able to see on mine.
Cube.
Now note, I only had one record, right? So if I were to create another one, let's create a torus. Let's do a 5, 10, and 20. We'll go back into our gallery view. There they are.
Kind of a fat torus there.
Yeah. If I refresh the page, the colors will change. All right, folks. So the next steps, I invite you to do any one of the following. Animating the shapes to move along a path, adding keyboard controls to fly around your scene, adding an input form to add shapes, sharing your experience on dev.to, completing the bonus exercises. And for those of you who are still troubleshooting, I invite you to try this out later. With Three.js, there's a lot of really cool stuff that you can do. 3D backgrounds, fully interactive setups, parallax. If you're having trouble, then you can check out the Kintone Developer Community Forum or Stack Overflow.
I just want to say thank you to all of you for your undivided attention today. We really appreciate it. And we also want to give special thanks to our community partners of HackBuddy by JavaScript LA. And if you enjoyed the content today and you want to see what's new or any upcoming workshops, please join us at our meetup. The URL is bit.ly, so bit.ly/KDP_events.
There's a lot of other places that you could have spent your time and attention, and you chose to spend it with us. I don't take that for granted. My team doesn't take that for granted. Thank you. We hope you learned something, and we hope you join us next time. And Alex, no problem whatsoever. We're here to answer your questions. Not an issue whatsoever. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And we look forward to seeing you next time. All right, everybody, take care.
Thank you.